So here we are. It is the end of February 2022, and we are almost 3 months into the new year. I don't know about you guys, but time has really flown already, right? And so when we think of February, we probably think of a few things. Some of you think of Black History Month. Some of you think of Valentine's Day, maybe President's Day weekend, all that stuff. Birthdays?
My birthday.
Oh,
was this week.
happy birthday. Birthdays, happy birthday. Yeah. So lots of things to celebrate. But did you know that February also recognizes a slew of other things? So I did some research, I'll tell you guys. So February is National Cherry Month, National Grapefruit Month, National Bird Feeding Month, Great American Pies Month, National Children's Dental Health Month, National Heart Month, National Library Lovers Month, National Weddings Month, National Snack Food Month, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, National Cancer Prevention Month, National Fasting February, and International Boost of Self-Esteem Month. Lots of stuff for February, right? Well, for me, February is all about death. And I'm sure you're wondering why I associate the month of February with death. Well, here's why. So this weekend marks the second anniversary of my father's passing. And so for those of you who've heard me speak about it in the past, you know that I did not grow up with my father. We lived somewhat an estranged life due to my parents divorcing when I was about 2 or 3. And that didn't end well. And then he married and has had another family. So between those two things, we did not grow up together. And but as spirit would have it, I ended up reconnecting with him in 2019. So after 40 years of being apart. And then he passed less than a year later in 2020, the last day of February. So February 29th, which was a leap year. So not only that, but my cousin unexpectedly passed away the same weekend 7 years ago. She was 21 in her last semester at college when she passed away from an asthma attack on the last day of February 2015, which was the 28th because it wasn't a leap year. So this cousin on my mother's side and my father did not know each other because we grew up separately. But despite them not knowing each other, they had a lot in common. My father was a learned history professor who spent his life studying, teaching, and writing books and textbooks about African and African American history. My cousin was a double major in African and African diaspora and international relations and global studies. So both shared a passion for educating the world about the importance of Mother Africa and the impact her people had around the world. And I really didn't put these two similarities together about my father and my cousin until a few days ago as I sat down to write this sermon. But in doing so, I also realized one more similarity, and that is that they both share the same burial date of March 14th, but 5 years apart. So because there are no coincidences, I really spent the last few days reflecting on these two people and trying to come to an understanding of why they're in my blood family in this lifetime, but more importantly, that they must be a part of my energetic soul family, which means I was probably meant to learn more from them than just my time with them here on the earth plane. So in looking back over their lives, they both were passionate about their life's work. It's just that one got to fully live out his life and one didn't. So the summer before my cousin's death, she'd been in Nicaragua gathering research to support her honors thesis on the concept of the diaspora as a geopolitical strategy of African entities like the African Union. And after graduation, she planned to study law or global policy. So basically ways to affect change on a global level. And she made such an impact at her school and in her graduate program that her alma mater, which is UT Austin, named a student lounge after her and created a set of guidelines after which they were modeled after her so that students in that program could exemplify to reach someday. All this from a 21-year-old. Now, even though she didn't live long, she had already made an impact on those around her. And that impact would ripple through generations of students who matriculated through that school and that program. Now, with my father, he's a professor, as I mentioned before, and he touched the lives of hundreds of students over his decades of teaching. The words of his students upon his passing were really touching to hear everything that they had to say. He dedicated his teaching to inspiring students in the classroom. He dedicated his textbooks to educating people about the richness of Africa and history. And he committed himself to mentoring students and colleagues outside of the classroom. And his impact still remains as the school has set up displays about him and also started a scholarship in his name. And he wrote several books, and one of the books had a passage that I learned when I met him back in 2019, and the passage stuck with me, and this is the passage. "My story is not a tale of academic serendipity. It is a story of a warrior in a winter of persistence and determination, armed with the unshakable faith and the humanistic resilience of African people. I regard education as a constructive social force that fosters positive and redeeming changes that advance the progress of humankind. To this end, I attempt to be creative in the profession of education, realizing that along the way, in the academic universe, someone will be motivated by what he or she sees in me." Beautiful. Thank you. And I can tell you that although my father was not a part of my life from ages 3 to 42, it was made clear to me before we reconnected in 2019 that he indeed was someone who changed lives. And I say this is very random. So I went to school in Atlanta, Georgia. And after I graduated college in 1999, I was working at a company that was helping people consolidate their debt. And as part of my job, we were given a list of leads to call and reach out to them all around the US and see if we could help them with our services. And as part of the call, we get these names, we identify ourselves, and we say, "Hey, we know you have debt, how can we help you?" So this one particular day, I called this woman, gave her my opening spiel, yada, 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 here's, you know who I am. And she was very nice, and she asked me to repeat my first name to her. And I did. And then she says, "Well, where is that name from?" I said, "No, it's Nigerian. I'm Nigerian, you know." And she said, "Wow, that is such a lovely name. You know, I once had a Nigerian professor in college in the late 70s. This man," and she spent the next 3 to 4 minutes going on and on about this man, how he changed her life, how he was so compassionate. And at the end of what she said, she said, "I'll always remember him, and his name was," she said his name. Who was it? My father. And I sat there on the phone, flabbergasted. Hadn't seen this gentleman since I was 2 or 3. Here it is, in 1999. Random woman calling on the phone. I hadn't called Michigan. I'm just talking to this woman, and this comes out of her mouth. And I just sat there in utter, complete silence, and just listened to her express her gratitude for this man. And a pit was deepening in my stomach as she's talking, because I didn't see where this was going until she said his name at the very end. And part of me wanted to say, "That's my father." But the other part of me knew that if I said that, she would ask me how he was. She'd want to make the connection. And unfortunately, I would have nothing to say. I would say, you probably know him better than I do at this point, because I haven't seen him since I was a kid. And at that time, it's funny, I didn't know that I'd be reunited with him exactly 20 years later, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So anyway, all this went through my mind as she was talking, and it took me a few seconds to kind of process it, and I just said, you know, I am happy that you had such a wonderful relationship and experience with your professor. And I just let it go at that. But it was really eye-opening for me that day. And years later, when I was attending law school, I was hired by the school to be a tutor for students who were struggling academically. And time after time, my students and my fellow classmates would tell me, you know, you really should go into teaching. You're really, really good at, have you ever considered going into teaching? And each time I heard that, I would cringe. I would cringe, and I would think to myself, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a professor. That's what my father did. And why would I want to be like someone who I don't know anything about? Well, here I am, law professor, loving every minute of it. And it's funny, when I connected with him in 2019, his family, he has 5 children, and his other people would tell me how he taught. And they were like, you know, your father, he would always go to class with just papers and a cup of water. And how do I go to class? Papers and a bottle of water. And they said, you know, he didn't use computers, and I don't like to use laptops when I teach. So it's funny, we have these similarities despite having grown up completely apart. So anyway, so when I connected with him back in 2019 and learned about him personally and talked to him and learned about his research and the books that he wrote, and when I ran across that passage I read a while ago, it just really moved me. I really connected with it because it really explained the passion that I had for teaching and how I wanted to inspire people and why I felt like it was my life's work. And at his funeral, hearing the students talk about him, they said some of the same things that I get from my students now in the form of emails, cards, and notes and all that. So it was very touching to see that we have that connection, even though I didn't ever think that would happen. Now, I will admit that when I first had an inkling that I was going to be talking about this topic today, I really didn't want to do it. I basically said, nope, not going to do it. Because I thought, well, who wants to hear about death? I mean, who wants to hear about people dying? I mean, it's not something you want to hear about. And I thought, well, you know, why am I going to talk about death? I don't even know that many people who died. And I'm like, you know, my grandparents, everyone's grandparents die. And then I was like, oh, well, my uncle, okay. And I started naming off people, and I'm like, you know, I actually do know quite a few people who've passed. And that's when I began to make these connections between my cousin and my father. And I was like, oh, I think I'm really supposed to write about this today. And then as I went through this process of getting this information, I realized, you know, they are probably part of my soul family. So that means I was supposed to be learning something from them in this life. And then I thought about, now that they're both on the other side, how would they continue to teach me? What would I continue to learn from them now that they're in spirit? So this got me thinking. So when my cousin passed in 2015, she was the first spirit that I was ever able to communicate with. And I had just come to this church in November of 2014, so she had just passed a few months later. I was new to this. I came from a very Christian background, and so this was all new to me. And she was the first person. And I was like, wow. I didn't think about that until I was getting this talk together. And when she passed, I remember preparing for her funeral. I was at home and I was packing a black outfit for the funeral, and something told me, grab that purple scarf. And I thought, was that my, well, I do go to this church and they do talk about talking to dead people, so yeah, maybe it was her, I don't know. And I said, I'm not going to take a purple scarf because it's a funeral. My family, we're supposed to all wear black, but something said, take that purple scarf. And I was like, okay. So I packed the purple scarf, arrived back, get to the viewing hall in Texas, and decked out in purple. So I looked around and I asked my aunt, I said, why all the purple? They go, oh, purple was her favorite color. I was like, so she was talking to me. Okay, there is something to this. But she was the first person who began to help me understand that I could communicate with those on the other side. And so from that moment on, she would begin to give me little bits of information and show up in readings for me time to time. And those of you who know or knew Reverend Millie, the head pastor at Fraternal Spiritualist Church, who passed away recently, one time she came through to Reverend Millie, and Reverend Millie said, you know, your cousin wants to say that she's your joy guide. I was like, my joy guide? Okay. And I thought about it. My cousin had this cute little giggle that whenever you heard it, it made you smile. Like, it didn't matter who you were, you just started laughing. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, there's something to this. And so I really appreciated the role that she played and currently plays in my spiritual development. Now, when my father passed, I was well into my mediumship and working and seeing clients for readings and didn't really think too much about it. But then I realized that he was the first spirit who helped me understand the process of healing emotionally and physically once we cross over. Within an hour of his passing, he appeared to me doing a little shoulder jig, just like this. And so I knew that he was enjoying his newfound freedom because in his body in this life, he was riddled with some health issues. And so seeing him move like that allowed me to go, wow, they really are healed physically when they cross over. And as the months went on, he would take every opportunity, and I mean every opportunity when I was getting a reading, to show up and explain to me things that he now understood as he undertook his own life review. And before him, I would tell my clients about us having a life review when we cross over. But I said this from a place of knowing, but I had no proof until my father passed. And through one medium, he explained how he was able to see and admit all the mistakes that he had made. He was able to work on being more vocal with his feelings. And he was able to understand the things that had blinded him while he was in this life. So I really learned the process that they go through when they get to the other side. And it helped deepen my spiritual work and my spiritual teachings and gave me a better understanding of how those in spirit have the opportunity to grow, to evolve, and to make amends if they choose once they transition. So true to his life's mission, he will always remain a teacher. And now, one of my teachers. So I realized that these two soul family members have been instrumental in my spiritual growth. Their deaths taught me a lot. Their deaths actually signaled the beginning of a deeper spiritual awareness of the spirit world for me. And for those of you who play with tarot cards, if you remember the death card is about major change and transformation, being open and receptive to opportunities for growth and learning. But sadly, I've come to realize that many people fear these two things, growth and learning, because growth means change. Change means stepping out into the unknown, and in the unknown, we have no control. And when we have no control, we don't feel safe. So similarly, when it comes to death, we also typically tend to have a fear. But what is the exact fear? Is it of how the death is going to happen? Or what happens after? Is it the thought of looking at our names on a list, if it's there, at some pearly gates? Or is it the thought of being sentenced to the flames of hell if you've done bad in your life? I don't know. Or maybe it's the fear that we will leave behind something here on earth. And if I'm being honest, I think that's where my fear is. Except that I was concerned with what I wouldn't leave behind. And I came to realize this fact in December of 2022. So now, normally, I wouldn't be as authentic as I'm about to be in this next moment, but hey, it is what it is. I'm all about growth. So back in December of 2020, a friend of mine was into researching various natural medicines. One of them called 5-MeO-DMT. Has anyone heard of this? A few of you, okay. So 5-MeO-DMT is 5-methoxy-N-dimethyltryptamine. And it's from the secretions of the bufo allivaris toad. And my friend said, hey, do you want to try this? It's great for opening yourself up to these great spiritual experiences. It cures depression, PTSD, anxiety. Like, this is a drug that people are really researching. It's basically called the God molecule. And I was like, no, thank you. Not going to do it. No. And I told him, I said, well, I'm not in a depression, PTSD, anxiety, so I don't need it. And he's like, but it could really, I mean, you do spiritual work, you hold ceremonies for people, you're a healer, you should really try this out. And I said, okay, I don't know. But really, I felt like I need to do my own research because I trust no one. So I did my own research. I was like, can you die doing this? Well, I have an overdose, those typical lawyer things. So I researched and I found that you don't die from it, and it basically lasts about 10 to 15 minutes and it's over, so it's not a big deal. And I said, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm doing it. So I go to my friend's house. My friend explains the whole process to me, lets me know what to do. I'm like, okay, because I'm a lawyer. I'm very like, okay, what do I do next? Do I take 2 breaths or 1 breath? Like, I'm really, And so I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready. So I'm in my comfy clothes. I'm on the comfy couch. I got my journal next to me to like jot down all the wisdom that I'm going to be opened up to in just a moment. Got the relaxing music in the background, and I am just ready for this journey. So I'm ready, and I do it, and about 30 to 45 seconds later, it starts to kick in. It was quick. I was like, okay. So I laid down. I was getting ready. So I'm laying there, and I start to feel, and so I'm sinking deeper into the couch. And there was music in the background, and I'm noticing that the music has begun to stretch out, as in like wah, 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 like stretching out to where it's stopping. And I was like, oh, snap. This is crazy, because you're very aware of what's going on. So I'm sitting there like, oh my God, this is going down. And all of a sudden I heard a voice say, do you want to die? And I was like, what? So I froze. And it's funny because in this state, you're not talking, but it's like your thoughts just move. So it's like, I guess I thought, what? What did you say? Can you repeat that? And the thing said, do you want to die? And I was like, dude, that's the second time they asked me that question. So at this point, I froze and I waited for more. Nothing. So I said, wait, like, die? Or do you mean like a metaphor, die, like die to ego, like shed the illusion, like all that new agey like stuff? Silence. Third time, do you want to die? And so I realized that I was not going to get any more clarification, and I had a choice to make. So part of me was like, so is this what people feel when they have the near-death experience, like where they have a choice and they want to come back? Like, this is weird. Like, I don't know what I should do. Am I ready to die today? Are my clothes clean? Did I clean the house? Like, I'm going through all these things on if I want to die, like just now, because I was like, well, my student loans would be gone, carpet. Like, I'm thinking about all things that I could shed, But then I was like, wait a minute. Oh, there's still things I want to do. I was like, man, okay, there's the kids that I haven't had yet. Oh, there's the relationships that I still need to finish clearing the karma for, so I don't have to deal with again when I come back. I was like, oh, wait, I see those places around the world I want to visit because global warming, we're destroying everything. They may not be here when I come back next time. I got to see that. I was like, oh my God, wait, my nonprofit, I'm not done with that. Like, I'm literally going through the things that I'm not done doing yet here. And I said, okay, I don't want to die. I'm not done yet. And then I heard the small voice inside say, okay, well, bring yourself back out. I was like, oh man. So I remember like sitting up on the couch, and my friend looked at me, and my friend said, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And I was like, oh wow, that was pretty intense. And I said, how long was I out? And my friend's like, about 4 minutes. It's like, great. So after coming back fully, I tell my friend what happened, and my friend's like, oh, it's just the ego death question. It happens all the time. And I said, well, it seemed pretty serious though, like the voice. And what's crazy is I recognize that voice. There have been times in my life where I have been through situations that have been precarious that I know I could have died, and that voice is the same voice. It's a voice that's piercing, that goes through every noise and every thought, and it just hits you. It was that voice, so I knew that this was serious, at least for me. So I said, okay, well, I won't ever do that again. So I tell you all of this because that experience left me really reflecting on something that I learned that day, and that was that I wasn't afraid to die. I was not afraid to die, and I always assumed that I was scared to die because everyone's scared to die, but that day I realized, oh, I'm not scared to die at all. I can die in a minute. It's just the, wait a minute, am I going to be done with stuff though? And so I knew that, when we crossed over, everything's fine. And every time I communicate with people on the other side, they talk about how great it is. So there's no fear in going over there. It's just that, am I going to be done here? I was afraid of not completing what I set for myself in this life. And with this month being the anniversary of the deaths of my cousin and my father, just brought me back to the topic of death and leaving the legacy that I wanted to leave. So death, some people call it the transition. I call it the rebirth, to be honest. I always think that when we die, we are rebirthed back in the spirit. And when we are born here, we die in spirit and come here. So it's like a cycle. So when we cry for funerals, they rejoice because we're born back over there, and vice versa. So death, if it's so common and 100% inevitable, why do we have such a hard time processing and accepting it? It's the one thing that every human being and every living organism will experience. No matter your ethnicity, the amount of money you have, the language you speak, your gender, your religion or lack thereof, or whatever perceived differences you feel set you apart from each other, we will all die. We will all go through this change. We will all be rebirthed. The only difference is how we experience the change. And when will it occur? And will we have left the legacy that we can be proud of, like my father and my cousin? I don't feel my legacy is complete. Do you guys ever think about that? You guys ever think about your legacy? Does anyone here really feel like there's nothing left for them to do? Exactly. Has anyone here accepted that you have absolutely no impact? No. All of you do. We all came here to leave a mark on the world. And if you haven't left it yet, you just simply haven't been able to remember what it is you came to do in this lifetime. That's all, because we all came with a purpose. The good news is that if you're sitting here listening to these words, then you still have time because you're alive. Now, as I sat down to write this next part of the talk, nothing came. A bout of writer's block just hit me hard for a few days. So I soon began to question my decision to write about this when I had nothing else to say. And I figured, you know what? I'll just write about something else. It's fine. I'll just switch. 8 pages in, I'll just switch. It's fine. But as you guessed, every time I tried to write about something else, nothing came. Nothing came at all. So I told my spirit guides, okay, fine, you guys, I'm going to stick through this. I'm going to write about and talk about death today, but I really need you guys to give me something to say. So I need it last Sunday because I want to give myself a week to write. I said, okay, I need it last Sunday. So last Sunday comes and I sit down, nothing. Nothing at all. I'm like, okay, it's fine. We got the holiday, Monday, President's Day. I'll be home all day. I'm not going to do anything. I'll just write. Monday comes along, nothing. Nothing at all. So I'm like, great. I have nothing else to say about what I've written about so far. So I did what most of us do when we have nothing else to do. We pull out our phones and we get on Facebook. So I got on my phone, got on Facebook, and I just scrolled once, didn't say anything, scrolled again. And on my second scroll, a friend of mine had posted on their timeline this: learn to write your own obituary. It helps you work harder and get ahead. And I was like, oh, thanks, guys. Here we go. So now that you have some time still left here on the earth plane, and you still can create the legacy you desire, what does it mean to write your own obituary? This process asks you to reflect on what would be important for people to highlight in your own life. What things and accomplishments do you feel are important for people to know about the real you? For me, if I were to write my own obituary, 4 things came to mind. Number 1, the things that I fought for. I call this finding what makes you happy and being a change maker. I'd want my obituary to read that I fought for spiritual enlightenment for all those whose paths that I cross. I would want, at my celebration of life, for people to watch as others told countless stories of how I helped them see their true selves, challenged them to live to their true potential, and helped them remember how and why they came to this world to change and make it a better place. I would also want to see all the lawyers I've taught over the years talk about being able to find joy in their work and the importance of human connection in a profession that is replete with bad jokes and disdain. I would love to hear people tell about how they were able to step into their authentic selves and how they unapologetically worked to prioritize self-care and emotional peace, and that they took pride in becoming better versions of themselves. Here, I think about my father and my cousin. They were both change makers that left their mark around them and on their academic institutions. But if I were to leave the earth today, what would people remember about me? Will I have lived out the passions for my life? I think so. My experience in December of 2020 highlighted a time that I needed to press through with fulfilling the purpose in my life. So ask yourself, what are you fighting for in this life? What changes do you want to see in the world? Whether it's making sure that pets don't suffer, ensuring that there's food equality for women and children, fighting to end racial discrimination, or marching for gender equality, or even making sure the kids in your neighborhood have a safe place to play, or just offering a smile to everyone that you see to bring light into their day. What mark will you be known for leaving on the world? The second thing I think about is the people who stood up for me. Over the years, I have learned to invest in relationships to feed my soul and then shed everything else. This seems to be my motto for my friendships and my work relationships, family dynamics, and romantic relationships. If you're not serving me, you gotta go. So who are the people in your life that consistently show up for you? Those who can be honest with you and constructively guide you back to your moral compass. Who are these people? I would want my obituary to name these people, letting the world know publicly how much I appreciate them and their presence in my life. And as a medium, I'm routinely in the position of imparting words of wisdom from spirit world to people. And while I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a channel for healing, I'm always saddened from the apologies and the I love yous that come from spirit to people who are here, because they were left unsaid. Sometimes people wait until they cross over to say, hey, I spent a large part of my life dealing with this thing over here that negatively impacted you, but I never said anything in my life about it. So we leave people in a state of hurt when we could have just opened up and been more honest with ourselves and them. And I know it's not easy to say what's on your mind or heart all the time. I get that. But taking regret to the grave is a heavy burden to bear. And my father showed me this. So who in your life needs to hear how you really, really feel? Who in your life deserves to know the truth about something? How can you ensure that your transition, your rebirth into spirit, isn't burdened with regrets of I coulda, shoulda, and woulda? The third thing I think about is the way that my life played out. Here I would reflect on all the things that I wanted to get done, from the number of children to have, to the number of countries I wanted my nonprofit to reach, from the karmic relationships that I needed to repair, to enjoying the full material abundance of being part of the human experience. I would want my obituary to list all the places I traveled and all the friendships that I made along the way. I'd want to acknowledge the progress that I made and holding the promise to myself to be a better version of myself each and every day. I would want to see my life the way others saw it, living a transparent life, one where people may not always agree with, but they can respect because they know that I've chosen to live it with integrity. So how do you see your life? Are you happy with the path that you've chosen for yourself? Have you created the family? Have you created the family that you desire? Maybe not by blood, but maybe mindful of relationships and friendships. Are there things still on your bucket list that you still need to do and see? If there's more that needs doing, don't wait for it. Create the life that you want right now. The fourth thing I think about is the wisdom that I want to share with the world. So we all have prior lives. And in these lifetimes, we learn things that help us evolve our soul. And it's my belief that with each incarnation, we are meant to then share that wisdom with the world. This wisdom may take the form of an invention that helps all of mankind, maybe a global movement in the name of peace, or maybe just teaching young minds as a kindergarten teacher. I call this last wisdom your legacy. This is what people would say about you as they celebrated your life. This is about the lives that you've touched, the work that you've done, basically your eulogy. What would you hope to hear people say about how you made them feel, about how you changed their lives? I would hope that my eulogy would be filled with words and stories of how I made people laugh with my crazy facial expressions when I was supposed to be in a serious situation, like here. I would think about times that I gave friends perfect advice that wasn't sugar-coated, but they knew came from a place of love. I would hope that they would talk about times that we laughed over cocktails and shenanigans, times that we cried over relationships. I would want my eulogy to be a celebration of relationships, not accomplishments, a celebration of how I changed the world, one person at a time, not who I knew. What wisdom do you have to share in this lifetime? What legacy are you most proud of leaving? Just take a moment here to feel into this. So I want you all to close your eyes and relax your shoulders. Just take in a full deep breath and just exhale nice and slow. And in your mind's eye, bring your awareness to your heart space and just allow it to gently unfold open. And inside, you will see and feel the wisdom of your soul. And just hold that feeling for a few moments so that you can come back to it at any time you need to remember the legacy that you are meant to leave on this earth. So take one more deep breath in and exhale it out, and so it is. You can slowly open up your eyes and bring yourself back. So I thought about writing these categories for your own obituary. It wasn't as morbid as I thought it would be. You're actually able to see the areas in your life that you want to work on before it's too late. And as you all experienced just a few moments ago, you can always tap into your own soul's wisdom to reveal more to you. So over the next week, take some time to ponder about these things. You'll be surprised at how much you've accomplished regarding the things that really, really, really matter in your life. And if you aren't as far as you'd like to have been, you at least can honor the progress that you've made and know what direction to head into. I pray that as you write your obituary that you are reminded how special you are and that your mark on the world is indeed needed. Thank you, guys.